Now, most investing mistakes don't come from, say, one terrible investment. They come from repeating quite simple terminology, but usually in the wrong context. Let me explain that bit. Because I've been investing for 12 years, I've been in crypto, ETFs, and stock market for a while. I've seen a lot of these pop up, but people just get the terminology wrong and they think they're doing the right thing, but they're not. So please do comment what your thoughts are on this and let me know what other mistakes or myths I may have missed, because I know there's probably about 10. And while you're down there, like the video, and more importantly, subscribe for more. Now, the first myth, and it's a simple myth, is more investments is more diversification. Not really when it comes to some parts of it. Let me explain. Owning, say, 10 ETFs doesn't mean you are diversified. I've had emails from people and messages on Facebook and stuff where they do outline what they've got and they want to know, am I on the right track? Quite a lot of the time, people have the same thing over and over again. For example, if you go on Trading 212 or Lightyear or Free Trade, they just list the top volume ones and there might actually be 3 of them as the S&P 500 or a global fund, just worded a little bit differently, if that makes sense. So then people get a bit confused or they buy it in the wrong currencies. That could be one problem that people fall into. And when we talk about, say, overlap, and I will go over my tool in a minute, say the global ETF of, say, the VWAP, which is on Vanguard. Brilliant, 3,800 stocks. Great. Heavy America, heavy technology. We know that, that's fine. But if you then add, say, the S&P 500, it makes it a bit messy. The S&P 500 has performed worse in the last 18 months than the global ETFs because the global ETFs have the same starting point. Basically, heavy tech, the semiconductor world, done well. They've also got the gains too. And they can also handle the volatility because they have more sectors, they have more stocks, and it works. This is why I do say to people, having one is totally fine, providing it's a global fund. Because when you start going into the realm of 4 or 5 ETFs and you say you've got semiconductors, you've got the S&P 500, the NASDAQ, whatever it may be, and then a global ETF thinking you're doing the right thing, you might own the same thing 4 or 5 times in each individual fund. Then what's the point? No, in a bull market, it's great, it's fine. But what if that one sector falls and you are all in on that sector? That is going to hurt. And look what has happened with semiconductors recently, which we will come on to in more detail on the next myth. But let's first go to my ETF screener tool. Now, this is my free one. Jump in, there's a link below. And as I say, totally free, just need your email address. And I will also show the paid version to showcase the differences between them because you don't need either. It doesn't matter which one, whatever suits you. I want you to get the best possible research. Now, let me give you a clear and obvious example. When we talk about, say, the All World Fund, right? So let's go the VWAP, and let's just go, I don't know, the S&P 500. The biggest problem you've got is the obvious. Nvidia and a couple of others. Their top 10s are very much the same. As you can see, 60% overlap. Bit mental. Now, I am going to be improving this tool. I've already improved the front end, not the overlap tool. So basically what I'll be adding is a bit more in terms of weights, in terms of percentage of sums, in terms of money. It will divvy it up a bit better so you can see in more real life situation. So you're probably wondering, how on earth do I fix this? Well, what people will do is probably go even higher or even further. And say, for example, a semiconductor one, right? I don't know, the Van Heck one here. It goes down a little bit because some of it kind of washes it out, as you can see, because there's more stuff not in those funds. But as you can see at the top, what's at the top? Well, you've got a couple of others. It's going to get a bit wishy-washy very, very quickly. So just be mindful of where you go because more doesn't mean better, as I say. So how do we fix this? Well, the first thing you do, I would always say, not financial advice, got to say that. The global ETF fund is brilliant. It has a lot of stocks, as you know, but why not just go for another country? For example, the UK. Nothing wrong with the UK other than the weather. That works. 3.1% overlap. That's spot on. So we can't really complain with that, can we? No. Because yes, they are in, but they're a tiny weight versus, say, the other American ones. So that is one thing you can do. There's other European ones that you may want to have, which does have higher, UK and stuff like that. But it's up to you. Go to a different sector or a different country, and that will give you a little bit more. That's an extra 100 stocks. And it helps you massively. These also say, I don't know, let me have a little look at emerging markets. And you may find that some of these are a bit mental, but let's have a little look. I've not looked yet. There you go, another emerging market one. So there's a situation where there's a couple of different ones here. It works very well. Now, I'm not 100% sure how many different ones are in there versus the S&P. Obviously, you got the Taiwan Semiconductor. There's going to be a bit of a mixture. But as you can see, yes, you can have some ETFs, providing you pick the right ones. Don't pick the wrong ones. But the big core advice here, by the way, is stick to a global ETF first. That is your foundation and should be the heaviest weight. And then everything else, you fit around it. Just to showcase my pay tool, it's a little bit different. Logic isn't the best on this one because I don't show the whole amount, and I'm going to start doing that. But again, with the all world fund versus say the, as I mentioned before, we know there's a 3% overlap here with the FTSE 100. I will be changing that. But this one shows you sector diversification to showcase how they're different in both ways, So stuff like that and seeing that in more detail will help you because that's diversification there. There's loads more sectors that you need to focus on, not just say technology or America, for example. And I get it, right? You may well go, well, it's okay we're having an overlap because it's doing well. But what if it doesn't? What if you're all in on tech or America and it goes wrong? And you don't have any of these to kind of help you kind of keep it stable. That's the whole point of it. So yeah, with this, it works very well. You can also have situations where, you can do swaps and what ifs, and you can also showcase logic with more data. It might say add or remove, and it'll showcase which would work better for you. This tool, by the way, it comes with all the gubbins on the side here. So the historical data, the portfolio health score, stock, and ETF research. It also now comes with a Discord, as well as courses and weekly exclusive content. Now, the next one, and probably a very obvious lie, is you haven't lost until you sell. This is by far the most dangerous phrase in investing, period. Regardless of what you bought it for, that is what it's worth today. That is where the problem lies. Wait until something gets to break even, for example, is purely an emotional decision, not really an investment strategy. I think, as I say, I've been in crypto for a long time and I've seen so many people hold on to things where they could have sold at a decent-ish area and still had some equity or some capital to use, and that now it's worth pins. The question you've got to ask yourself, regardless of what's happening with the price, would you buy that again today? That is the biggest question you need to ask. And if you don't ask it, there's a problem, because regardless of the price, if it's good, that's fine. You can hold on to it. You can add to it. You can reduce that average you bought it for a much better price and therefore have a better chance of success. But people don't do that. They just wait and hope it turns around and, cross their fingers and their toes. And as I say, I've been in crypto for a while and I've seen people do this with altcoins and thinking, I remember people like looking at certain things thinking, I'll just hold on to it, it's fine. It's 20% down. But now it's like 99% down. It's like, you've got to really bite the bullet. And with investing as well, you have to be ruthless. Because at the end of the day, right, regardless of what you buy, what you like or what you want, it's entirely up to you in terms of what you are as a person comfortable with. There's a reason why you've started investing, right? So on the screen, this is TradingView. This is Bitcoin. And let me just showcase some horribleness, because let's just say, for example, right, let's just look at some average. I'll go back in time so it's not too messy on the screen. Lovely little bear market here. So previous cycles, right? So the big situation, and I mentioned it before, you need to buy more lower to reduce that average, right? So if you're say, we'll look at this as a logic, 50% down. So say for the previous all-time high, we're down 50%. Now, the question is, to make that money back, what do you need to do? Well, most people just think, well, what do I need to do to recover that? Well, to recover that, it's actually 100% gain, technically, which is a bit scary. So when you go the other way from this low to this high, you are looking at 100% gain to get that back. Likewise, with a 75% drop, you needed to go 300%, for example. If it's a 90% down or whatever, bear with me. Let me just showcase this. So let's just say, for example, a 90% correction, which would be down here. Obviously, it hasn't happened, but you get my idea. You are looking at a 900% gain for you, pretty much, or give or take, to recover that move, right? When you're looking at it that point of view. So as you can see there. Pretty disgusting, isn't it? So this is why you buy as low as you possibly can with good assets that you believe in, that you've researched. You are happy to do it. But as I say, people don't. So bit of like real life experience. Done it myself. I've seen other people do it. You get excited, you buy. It's a bit high, that. Horrible honking. I'm not going to buy that. Why should I buy that shit? And all of a sudden it does that. Didn't with Bitcoin. I believed in Bitcoin. I bought quite a lot of it at the bottom, and it's changed my life many, many times over, as well as in this cycle as well in the past, right? The situation is with an altcoin or with a very, very cyclical stock, an ETF, whatever it may be. And let's actually look at that. Let's look at semiconductors, because I think that's important to look at. Just an idea now, AMD, not so much a semiconductor, but you get the idea of where I'm going with this processing power. It's on a cyclical boom. People might have bought this high, they might be flapping right now. I get it. Same with, obviously, you can talk about, Nvidia, for example, quite an obvious one. Done really well, holding its levels. MicroStrategy, not so much, right? Cyclical. We can look at IREN. I was in IREN very early on. I sold it for a decent profit, and it actually corrected 70%, and then it went an absolute monster move. It happens, right? But at the end of the day, it's about timing. And if you can buy as low as you possibly can, you've done your job. If you can manage your position by believing in something and buying lower and getting a fair price, and the profit is in that entry point, you're going to do all right with the averages. But don't judge an investment on price. That is probably the biggest thing here. Because as much as people are bleeding out with the world of semiconductors right now, it might just be a short-term blip. This is a semiconductor fund here, by the way, just saying. So it's all about timing, as I say. You buy this in 2025, right? Or wherever in the summer of 2025, for example. It's done a 200%. Obviously down a bit now, but ultimately, if people buy high because everyone's rampant raving about it, and you are down, say, 15% or 20% or 22%, 23%, you're going to feel it. Now, the final lie, and the one you should know, because I talk about it, the highest dividend yield gives you the most income. Does not do that at all. You've got to have balance, right? And we'll talk about that, because I've talked about this before in previous videos. A 10% yield sounds great. You're going to get paid once, twice, 3 times, 4 times a year, however many times they do it. Over the course of that time, it's a decent chunk of money. But what if it erodes in price? That's the problem we have. A collapsing share price is not what you look for. You look for a solid company, right, that's sustainable, with a good, healthy cash flow, a good, healthy balance sheet, and a sustainable, I'll say it again, sustainable dividend yield. That's it. Normally, the situation is simple. A byproduct of a good company is they distribute profits. That's it. They go to shareholders. That's it. People look at dividend investing as, oh, I just want dividends. No. I am looking for good quality companies that do grow and also pay a dividend. Balance. Just be mindful of the context here. Let me look at Vodafone. Vodafone's a really good example for this, because it looks great here. But a couple of years ago, if you just reversed it a little bit, Vodafone was in the biggest decline you've ever seen in your life. Vodafone was the top network in the UK at one point. It paid dividends, it cut dividends, it stopped growing its dividends. And over the course of time, just the price just eroded. And I know timing is everything, right? But as I say, you look at this and you think that looks absolutely dire. And for years and years and years, it was dropping percentages all over the place. Now it's kind of come up. Don't get me wrong, buy in 2025, you look all right. But no, you don't want a stock that's like this. Now, not to scare you, but if you are in Vodafone, this is what it looks like. However, the PE ratio is missing, so that probably has affected it a little bit. However, there's still some glaringly obvious red flags. Yes, there's a yield of 3.39% currently. But if you look overall, it's actually struggling with a lot of other things. So net margin, for example, return on capital invested, even on some of this advanced analytics, some of the stuff is not great, especially for the growth. A lot of the growth is shrunk. It's shrunk massively. Obviously, dividends have shrunk. You can look at some stuff that looks quite cheap, but there's a few little things. Even dividend payout ratio, not ideal. There's a few red flags. But as well, you look at the free cash flow, it's just shrinking. Over the course of time, that is shrinking. And even on the quarterly report and stuff like that, once that comes up here, it just looks like it's shrinking quite a lot. That is not a hallmark of a company that is going to do well. Yes, it's paid its dividend, but it hasn't raised it. That is, a problem. And when we talk about yield, and the reason why I say Vodafone, well, 3.4 or 3.5, and it wasn't much higher than that. It was like, I think it was like 5% not that long ago. Showcases how, well, there's a bit of an issue here. So don't always go for the high ones. Look for a quality company that, yeah, it might well be paying a dividend. It might not be. It's up to you. But you want a company that's good because it's going to then get confidence and it's going to grow in price and people want it then. This is why you also, as well, I know it sounds a bit noddy, but you need to prioritize that cash flow, that debt, the earnings, the dividend coverage, because that's more valuable than waiting for, say, 10%. But what if that company goes through an absolute horrendous period and the price just drops? In terms of my overall portfolio, just to showcase the passive income side, 2.34% currently based off it. I do have my pension in there, so it's brought it down a little bit because that's an accumulation fund. But profit-wise, 19.3%. So it is still a growing portfolio, even with the sidearm of that growth income, which over the course of time will be reinvested. It will compound. Balance. By the way, if you're interested, there's a link to this tool, free trial. You can put in your portfolio, you can see what's happening. So I'm expected 2 more. I'm expecting Mighty. Even though I've sold this, I was past the ex-dividend date, so that's pretty good. And then I'll get my Legal in General, which is a monthly one as well. So overall, pretty good. And then we should get into some bigger moves. More holdings does not mean more diversification unless you're in individual stocks or you've specifically picked the correct sectors, the correct countries, and the correct type of stocks within those funds. Stop refusing to sell to erase a loss. Sometimes you just got to bite the bullet and go, I'm messed up there. And a higher yield does not guarantee long-term income. Definitely not. Very, very hard to find. Yes, you can get a growing dividend yield, which will grow over the course of time, nice and slowly, and compound, getting you a better yield on cost, providing those companies are solid.